Hey, good morning, everyone. It's a lovely day out there. Okay, so we've been going through Exodus. The original plan was to just keep going through the Old Testament till we hit First Kings, but the book came in a lot earlier than I thought it would, and I got it last week. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hopefully finish up the 10 plagues today. We're going to jump forward next week and probably talk about Mount Sinai. Because after that, this is going to sound weird. So what we've been looking at is what makes God different, why there's no other God like him. And once we get after Mount Sinai, it's really more of the same. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It is because God is consistent. But once he establishes his covenant with his people at Sinai, from there, it's they obey, then they don't. There's consequences. They obey and they don't. There's consequences. They obey, they don't. And it's so we can fast track some of that, come back to it some later. I still need to spend a Sunday talking about Moses and his faith for choosing not to live like the Egyptians. My research came in. I still just have books I want to use for research for that came in. I just have to do the research. I haven't forgotten that assignment you gave me, Terry. So we'll get that in there, and then we'll get started on the official book from Lads to Leaders for the material in First Kings. So, because if we go at the rate we're going, we will get to the book in probably 2028, 2029 at the rate I go. So, the elders have given me the best gift they can, which is as much time as I want. That's also the worst gift you can give someone sometimes too. So, it's boundaries, and I have them with my students. You have this much time to turn something in. Here I'm just like, I'm just going to take my time with everything, so I need to be a bit more responsible. So we're going to fast track some of this. All right, before we get started, Vic, will you open us up in prayer?
Our Lord, we're grateful that we're once again able to gather here and look at the Word. We thank you for your wisdom that we can comprehend. We pray for knowledge. We pray for courage. And we thank you for this class this morning that Steve's presenting. In Christ we pray.
Amen. Okay. The key verse, as has been and will continue to be, 1 Kings 8:23. O Lord, O God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven above or on earth beneath, keeping covenant and showing steadfast love to your servants who walk before you with all their heart. So we've been on the plagues here. We were on, let's see, I believe we stopped at flies. I believe that's as far as we got. Maybe we should talk about this some other time. Thinking that too, maybe. Yeah, it might be a good idea, actually. Let's jump over this right now, and I'm actually going to just kill the PowerPoint, because I think we can just walk over to Sinai instead. That would be a better idea. Yes, that's a much better idea. I think we've established through what we've been talking that with the plagues that God is God and that the gods of Egypt are not. So let's jump the plagues for now. So essentially they're going to leave. Pharaoh's heart will be hardened to the point that it breaks. Remember, it was conditional. If God says, if you let my people go, these things will not happen to you. He did not let them go. God will give conditional things to the Israelites as well, come Numbers and Deuteronomy. If you do these things, this will happen. If you do not do these things will happen. And they are progressively worse things. And the worst thing of all that he says is you will be sent back to Egypt, to where I said you will not come back from, and no one will even take you. So you will be even less accepted there than you were. So they flee Egypt. So the Israelites leave Egypt. Some of the Egyptians go with them, as is mentioned in the text. They also happen to get a lot of gold and silver and things from the Egyptians. God told them to do that from their neighbors because their neighbors are scared of them. Because remember, none of these plagues affect the Israelites, or at least most of them do not. but the Egyptians they're all affected by it. So they get to Passover established. Well, they have the first Passover meal. Then they leave. Then they get to the Red Sea, and here is where the first of what I think God says. What these people, it says what at some point these people have tested me 10 times or something like that, or some number. And this is the first of those probably. They get to the Red Sea, and what happened? So you got the Red Sea on one side, you got Pharaoh and his army coming on the other. How are the Israelites handling this? Panic City, freaking out. Why did you take us out of Egypt just to die here by this water? There's always going to be this constant phrase, why did you take us out of Egypt to die? Then fill in the blank. At some point they're going to be, why did you take out of Egypt to starve? We missed the leeks. That's about as saying we missed the kale. They just, yeah. But anyway, so God reminds him who he is. And he messed with the water before with the Nile, turned it to blood. This time he just parts it, and it's like a wall. Now I know some scientists and historians say, well, it wasn't the Red Sea because it's not deep enough, or maybe it was the Reed Sea, which is definitely not deep enough, or we don't know the exact crossing point. It could be several places. We just know that they got from point A to point B and that it was dry. Maybe one of these days the archaeologists will figure it out. I mean, they figured out where the Hittites were after people said for a century and a half that the Hittites didn't exist, so.
Hey, Steve, I know it's kind of a little joke that I heard at one point is where somebody told a little boy that it was shallow there where when you crossed, the little boy said, wow, that's a miracle because he drowned the whole army.
Yes. Yeah, yes. Yes, I know. I mean, it's possible to drown with very little water, but that takes effort. So anyway, so they cross the Red Sea. Chapter 15, we have the Song of Moses. And then we have Miriam's song also in there, very brief thing. Now, the second test is going to come up. They set out from the Red Sea. This is 15:22. They went into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter. Therefore, it was named Marah. In ancient times in this Eastern culture, it was very common to. I thought I turned that off. Sorry. I'm gonna kill that. You know what? I'm just gonna kill this. There. Nothing to see. So I get for having two different screens going at once. So, anyways. Where is I? Oh yeah, Marah. They tend to name things after attributes, things that they do with people. Moses meant being drawn out because he was being taken out of the water. We don't know what Moses' mom actually named him, but apparently he goes by the name Moses. So, and maybe his original name was Moses anyways. But Marah means bitter. Anyone remember anyone in the Old Testament who decides to be called Marah? Naomi. Because she got married, she went out, there was a famine, she went out, this is the book of Ruth, in the book of Ruth, they went out to land, they went out from their territory, and she had two sons. They died before she left her without any grandchildren or children. Her husband died. Incidentally, if you look at what her son's names and what her husband's name means, it's not very complimentary. Elimelech and those names, the sons were not complimentary. If you look at what they mean, I know a elder at another church that transliterated the book of Ruth, and it was hard to read without laughing when you got to the actual names and things like that. But anyway, Naomi, when she returns to essentially Bethlehem or that area, says, "Don't call me Naomi anymore. Call me Mara, because the Lord has dealt bitterly with me," or something along those lines. So the people grumble, hey, we need water because, we're in a wilderness. We're like borderline desert here. What are we going to drink? And, they didn't bring their bottles of Deer Park or Aquafina with them, so They didn't have them. The Stanley Cup wasn't invented yet to keep all that water cool and clean for them. So Moses cried to the Lord. The Lord showed him a log. He threw it in the water, and the water became sweet. Now, obviously, if we do that, it's probably if we decide that we need to make Mosquito Lake drinkable and we throw a log in, it's probably not going to do much aside from make a big splash, upset some fish, and maybe some people on a boat. But it works here. There the Lord made for them a statute and a rule, and there he tested them, saying, if you will diligently listen to the voice of the Lord your God and do that which is right in his eyes, and give ear to his commandments and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord your healer. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. I've been told that this was literally just like 2 or 3 miles away from Mara. It was like literally like almost next door. All they do is like around a corner and bang, there were the springs. If they would have waited just a little bit longer, the two were pretty close to each other. But they got impatient. We'd get impatient. Incidentally, if you notice, even we're not at Sinai yet, and Lord is starting to introduce to them his laws. And he's saying, okay, if you follow, all this stuff that happened to the Egyptians won't happen to you. And that's it. He doesn't say, okay, then here's 1,500 other things. He just like one thing, it's like just one thing right now. He's going to slowly build them up to introducing his laws, what he's going to do. Because if he gave that all to them at once, that would be too much. He essentially gives the law starting in Exodus through Deuteronomy. It's a 40-year process. Imagine getting instruction for 40 years. That's actually pretty common if you think about it. Because things unfold, we learn more. So chapter 16, it's time to leave Elim. And they come to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they departed from the land of Egypt. So they've been gone for a month and a half so far. It's going to take them about a year, maybe 2 years to get to Sinai, if I remember correctly, and then 38 years of wandering. Actually, no, it's got to take them 2 years to get to where Canaan is, and then 38 years of wandering. 38 years is mentioned in Deuteronomy. God gives them counts the 2 years from before. So then, would that we had died in the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt when we sat near by the meat pots and ate bread to the full, for you have brought us into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. All right, so Moses is going to let them be killed Moses is going to let them be killed at the Red Sea. 2, he's going to let them dehydrate. Now he's going to let them starve. At least that's what the Israelites are saying. And they really, really did not want to be in Egypt just a month and a half before this, if you remember that. How fast and fickle we are to change our minds. Like, you ever like a day where like everything's really going good, and then all of a sudden like one little thing happens, and all of a sudden everything just feels ruined? Yeah. We do the same. So the Lord said to Moses, I'm about to rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion. He gave them some numbers. Everyone will have what they need. So they get manna. God says to them also, on day 6, gather twice what you need, because there will not be any on the 7th day. And make sure to eat the amount you take each day, because if you try to save it over, it's not going to be good. Some of them save it over, and it becomes rotten. Some of them go out to get some on the 7th day, and there isn't any. So God's going to start a early version of the Sabbath here. Larry, do you have something to say?
I think it's interesting that word manna means what is it?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
We have a name for it, so we're going to call it what is it?
Yeah. Yeah. And still don't know what they didn't know what it is. We don't know what it is. On the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread. This is verse 22 from 16. And when all the leaders of the congregation came and told Moses, he said to them, this is what the Lord has commanded. Tomorrow is a day of solemn rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake and boil what you will boil, and all that is left over lay aside to be kept till the morning. So they laid it aside till the morning. Moses commanded them, and it did not stink, and there were no worms in it. Moses said, eat it today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord today. I skipped a... No, we're fine here. 6 days you shall gather, but on the seventh, which is Sabbath, there will be none. On the seventh day, some of the people went out to gather, but they found none. Now, give the people some slack here. They've been working for the last 100. We don't know how long the slavery lasted in Egypt. They've not had a day off, as far as we know. Because if they had, Pharaoh would have been like, yeah, take a couple days to go worship and come back. Haven't had a day off. They don't know what it means to rest. One of the first things God is teaching his people here is that it is okay to rest, that your work does not save you or define you. You are not defined by your job. I know that is countercultural to our Western thinking here, especially here in the States. You are not defined by your job. That's part of you. That's part of who you are. But that is not where God sees value in you, because you are His creation, not because of what you do. And this is going to be a reminder that the Israelites will not be able to work themselves into salvation, just as we cannot work ourselves into salvation, try as we might want to. The Pharisees are going to try it, and Jesus is going to tell the apostles and the others, you need to be more righteous than the Pharisees, which sounds like an impossibility, but is actually a really low bar to step over if you think about it. But anyway, so the Sabbath is going to be partially introduced here. And he's going to say, see, the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore, on the sixth day, he gives you bread for 2 days. Remain each of you in his place. Let no one go out of his place on the seventh day. So when it comes to the seventh day, just stay home. Don't even go outside, because they need to learn to rest. They need to learn that their work does not define them or does not give them value does not make them, that their work is not what God loves them for. That they do not need to work to please him, like they did for Pharaoh and the gods of Egypt. Now, is there things for them to do the other 6 days of the week? Absolutely. Remember, they came in with livestock. They're leaving with livestock. They are just as nomadic now as they were in the days of Abraham and Isaac. So there is much to do. And I know there are things on a Sunday or Saturday, whatever, that you have to do for your animals. You're not going to give your horse 2 days worth of feed and hope it, portions it out. It doesn't work that way. But at the same time, God's trying to set a boundary, essentially saying, okay, this is fine, this is not. Because what you need to do to survive is one thing. What you need to do what you don't need to do to survive is another. All right, so we have the manna. So that's test number 3, I think we're at. Maybe 4 now. I think we're on speed test 3, I want to say. I'm not keeping super well track. Okay, so chapter 17. The congregation of Israel moved on from the wilderness of sin by stages according to the commandment of the Lord. So he's moving them bit by bit, because you don't want to overdo this. Again, remember, you got thousands of people. You got a lot of livestock. You have a lot of little ones. We tend to think of that. Anyone that was born before that was born in Egypt doesn't make it to the promised land. That's not right. It's anyone that was 20 by the time of the first census doesn't make it to the promised land. So, because there's got to be a second census, and those will be the ones that go. So you have a lot of small children here, most likely that are going to grow up over the next 40 years and eventually get into the promised land. So, as Jacob said, you can't push the group too far lest they die. Though Jacob is also, just trying to avoid meeting Esau. Okay, so anyway, chapter 17. The people quarreled with Moses, give us water to drink. Have we heard this before? Moses said, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord? The people thirsted there for water, and the people grumbled against Moses and said, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? So, we're going to get killed by Pharaoh. We're going to dehydrate. We're going to starve. We're going to dehydrate again. Moses cried to the Lord, what shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me. It's getting bad. Though, I say it's getting bad, but we have to remember too, Moses does not take to challenges very well. he's getting better at it. But if you remember, when things didn't go right, when he first talked to Pharaoh and then the Israelites, you made us a stench. Moses is like, you told me to bring them out. Why has this happened? It's all, So maybe it's Moses is at the point of being stoned. Maybe Moses is overreacting. We're not sure. But he could use some help. We could use some help. We definitely need help. The Lord said to Moses, pass on before the people. I just said pass out. Excuse me. Pass on before the people, taking with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Before I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb. Have we been to Mount Horeb before? In here? Yes, that's where the burning bush was. And you shall strike the rock, and water shall come out of it, and the people will drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of the Lord. And he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah because of the quarreling of the people in Israel, and because they tested the Lord by saying, is the Lord among us or not? Right. So, anything stick out to you about striking a rock to get water out of it? Aside from the fact that it's going to happen in Numbers later on. Or maybe about where this rock is that's being struck.
They struck the rock twice in Numbers.
Oh, aside from that. Before I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water shall come out of it. If God is standing before the rock, and the rock is being struck, what's also being struck? God. So, this could be a case of pre-incarnate Jesus standing there. And remember, there is a lot of phraseology in the Old Testament and our hymns about being in the shelter of the rock and God being a rock and things like that. This is not saying like God is some terror, is like God is God of the earth. He is God of the earth. There's going to be a discussion, I think it's in it's later on in 1 Kings, where they're like, well, we couldn't defeat God, their God must be the God of the plains because we couldn't defeat them in the hills. So they go to the hills and no, God is God. But it's so yeah, it's interesting because if you're striking at something and there's something in front of it, it's going to be struck too. Which is why I think it's even more egregious that Moses strikes that rock in Numbers instead of speaking to it, because he did not have permission to strike God that time. Remember, God will take onto himself things that we as people cannot do. He did it with the rainbow, saying, "Hey, that bow sticking up in the air, I can keep a promise not to destroy the world via flood. You can't." As this promise with Abraham. Abraham cannot guarantee his successive line. God can, so he's like, I'm going to take both sides of this covenant. Yes, Larry?
I was going to say that striking the rock once kept the typology of Christ and his death.
Yes.
When they struck the rock twice, it violated the typology for the New Testament.
Yes. And also, it proved that Egypt had not completely gotten out of Moses as much as Moses wanted it out. So then there's going to be a war with Amalek, a skirmish with them. Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So there are going to be some skirmishes and battles happening off and on throughout this journey, and God is not going to take kindly to any of it, especially by the end with the Ammonites and the Moabites, who are supposed to help the Israelites not fight against them, because they are related to them through Lot. But that's way later in this area. So chapter 18 is interesting. Moses' father-in-law is going to stop by to visit, and he's essentially going to tell Moses, why are you taking on the role of judge for these thousands and thousands of people? And Moses is like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, that's what I'm supposed to do. And he's like, no. Get leaders, and then, put everyone in groups, and then break those groups apart, one person for so many for the, and all of a sudden, things are a bit easier for Moses, or should be. So this way, Moses can focus on the more important things instead of the daily little, I would call them trivial things that we tend to get caught up in sometimes. I guess you could call this a theocratical bureaucracy in some ways, just without as much red tape, probably. So, Moses listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he said. Now, so, I'm saying so way too often here. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, also brought Zipporah, Moses' wife, and the 2 sons too. So apparently, Zipporah had gone part of the way to Egypt and then turned back with the 2 sons. So she's come with Jethro. I think she's going to stay with them this time, though we're not going to hear from her. But Aaron and Miriam are going to throw a fit later on about Moses' wife. So I think she might be staying with them, and they're going to eventually look at her and go, wait, she's not one of us, and God will not take kindly to that. Because remember, there are Egyptians with this group. God is not worried about, God, for the most part, is not worried about where you come from. And he's going to be very clear in the Old Testament that if someone comes to you from another nation, as long as they're not one of the 7 nations that God orders to be wiped out, eradicated, you accept them. They're sojourners. You do not look. Jesus is going to remind them that with his people, with the Jews, with the Good Samaritan as well, with that as well. That it's not that God is interested in your heart, not where you're from, and that they're to look after others. So, chapter 19, Israel at Mount Sinai on the 3rd new moon after the people have gone out of the land of Egypt. So we're about 3 months out now. It's been a very busy 3 months here. They came out of the wilderness of Sinai. They set out from Rephidim and came into the wilderness of Sinai. And they encamped in the wilderness. There Israel encamped before the mountain while Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him out of the mountain, saying, Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob and tell the people of Israel, You yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. It's a little preview of Isaiah 40 there. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, for all earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel. So Moses goes up partially, and here's this, goes back down. Moses is going to spend a lot of time going up and down Mount Sinai. He's going to spend several months up there too by the time this is all over. I'm not kidding. So Moses came and called the elders and the people and set before them all the words that the Lord commanded him. The people answered together and said, All that the Lord has spoken, we will do. That is such a hard promise to keep. And Moses repeated the words of the people to the Lord, and the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I am coming to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you and may also believe you forever. So, the Israelites have seen God's hand throughout all of this. They haven't heard him. The only one who's really heard God is Moses. Let's see. Go to the people. Okay, so they're going to get ready to be, get ready for God to come down and talk to them. It's going to be a 3-day consecration process. Do not let anything touch the mountain, whether human or an animal. If you touch it, you're not going on the rest of the journey. You're staying back. So Moses went down to the mountain again and let them know what was going on. So there's a lot of back and forth, up and down. Now, I don't think he's going to the pinnacle every time, but he has to go. Maybe he is, but it's a lot of. We always just think if they get to Sinai, bang, 10 Commandments, then party time, then 10 Commandments again. But no, this is like God's giving instructions in very small chunks here, so they can be ready and understand. And I think we miss that a lot because we want to rush to the 10 Commandments, or the 10 words, if you want to think of them that way. On the morning of the 3rd day, there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast, so that all the people in the camp trembled. Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they took their stand at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire. The smoke of it went up like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain trembled greatly. And as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him. Where's this trumpet coming from? Sorry, it just occurred to me, like, where's this trumpet coming from? Might be a heavenly one, because I don't recall there being any trumpet instructions earlier. Moses spoke, and God answered him in thunder. The Lord came down on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. So this is his 3rd time heading up, I think. It's definitely getting leg day in here when he's doing this. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go down and warn the people, lest they break through to the Lord to look, and many of them perish." Because what do we want to do when something? What do we want to do when we see something miraculous or something strange, something we're not familiar with? Yeah, stare at it. And these people have not seen God yet. He got them out of Egypt. No one else is going to do that. What do you want to do? You want to see the hand you want to see the person that saved you, right? And God's going to like, no. Moses, you can come up here and talk to me, but everyone else needs to stay down there. He's going to let some of the elders up there. Joshua's going to be a kind of an errand boy back and forth here coming up, but and God's going to be very clear here. He's like, no one sees me. Because remember, God is spirit. Yes?
So I never really thought about it. He keeps going up and down Mount Sinai. I mean, obviously, they weren't wandering at the time. They were just hanging out there for a long period of time.
They're there for probably I want to say it might be close to it. By the time they're done, it's probably close to a year, because they're going to build, because after the 10 Commandments and everything with that, they're going to build do all the stuff to build the tabernacle and everything and the Ark of the Covenant. Then they're going to start moving again. They're in Sinai throughout. I think I don't think they leave Sinai until Numbers, because they're in Sinai during Leviticus, I believe, too. They're going to spend a long time here. They're here for probably about a year, I'd say. They're not wandering. The wandering comes later.
And of course, we have to give them time to build a golden calf.
Well, Aaron's just going to throw the stuff. He's going to throw it in there, and it's going to magically pop out. That's what he says in Exodus 32.
Did you have a question? Were you asking a question?
Kind of, yeah. I was just saying it didn't seem like they were wandering.
No, they are camped out here.
Hanging out.
Yeah. They are camped out at Sinai. They're going to be there for probably about a year, because there's going to be a lot of stuff that that God wants them to do before they start moving again.
So they're probably tired of that too. They want to go to a better place.
Well, they've been traveling for about 3 months at this point, so they'll be here for a while. But they might be tired of the place by the time they're done. But I think there's going to be a lot to keep them occupied in a good way too while they're there. So anyway, where were we? So the Lord said to Moses, "Go down and warn the people, lest they break through to the Lord to look, and many of them perish. Also, let the priests who come near to the Lord consecrate themselves, lest the Lord break out against them." Wait, how do we have priests if we don't have the law yet? Yeah, where are these priests coming from? Well, they're going to come from Levi, but what if some of Pharaoh's priests left too and converted? I'm not saying that happened, but I'm saying, where are these priests coming from all of a sudden? Because I don't think God's actually separated out the tribe of Levi yet. True, but I don't think Jethro departed. He went back to his own country. The end of chapter 18. Yes.
There's been a lot of revelation.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe we're unaware.
Yeah. Because God will officially tell Moses, separate the sons of Levi, but that might be more for public-facing reasons there. So yeah, we don't know. But remember, even in Genesis, there was a priest that served God Most High, that served God, Melchizedek. What was it Jesus was told? Hey, there's someone preaching in your name but doesn't follow us. What should we do? And Jesus said, let him alone. He's not harming the, God provides and has people that we don't know about. This could be one of those cases where just because they're not directly part of the story, that they are still involved with it. Okay. And let the priests who come near to the Lord consecrate themselves, lest the Lord break out against them. And Moses said to the Lord, the people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you yourself warned us, saying, set limits around the mountain and consecrate it. So God says, let the priests come up. And Moses is like, you said we couldn't go up there. And, and he's overthinking this. We'd probably overthink this. And the Lord said to him, go down and come up, bringing Aaron with you, but do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break out against them. So they can come near, but they can't go up too. So I guess, kind of like a boundary line. All right, that is our time there. So Moses went down to the people and told them, look at the Ten Commandments next week.